Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. An extreme risk protection order is an order sometimes associated with the term red flag laws, which are and have been for some time a means much advocated by people that take a reasonable approach to the use and possession of firearms to try to interdict a situation where people are at risk of harming themselves and others. It's very much like a domestic violence protection order. Indications in other states are that 2/3 of them are issued due to risk of suicide. And indications are in Connecticut and in Indiana that stronger enforcement through these extreme risk protection orders resulted in suicides dropping significantly in measurable percentages in both cases. For reasons that are very difficult to understand, this bill attempts to stop the enforcement of extreme risk protection orders issued by other states because Texas has no provision for extreme risk protection orders. No matter how much a person indicates a propensity, and perhaps a growing propensity toward the use of firearms to carry out suicide or mass violence, no matter what the indications, we have no provision for interdicting that behavior and separating that person from their gun. We don't have that in Texas. So one would ask, well, then why do we have this bill before us? It's just another bill to try to flex our pro-gun muscles to make it look like we're doing something. What they're trying to do is to say it's going to be a crime for any one of our public officials to enforce a protective order issued to stop somebody who's close to suicide or close to a mass shooting, even if that order has been issued by another state. So New Mexico, which has extreme risk protection orders, could issue one against somebody who is threatening mass shootings, and that person could leave and drive 30 miles south into El Paso, and no one would recognize that order, buy a gun and carry out exactly the atrocity that he was prevented from carrying out in New Mexico. This is what's known as a bad old bill. It doesn't have any purpose. I'm really surprised that the majority wants to block up the calendar with this kind of legislation when more substantive bills are coming after it. The amendment that I've offered is an amendment to strike everything below the enacting clause and kill this bad old bill and move on to something that is substantive.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for some questions?
Gentleman
yield.
yield for questions. He yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Bryant, you talked about how red flag laws help reduce suicide. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's my understanding from some research that red flag laws allow for the temporary removal of firearms from individuals deemed a significant risk to themselves, particularly in cases of suicidal ideation or behavior. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And are you aware that there is actually research that shows that there is a statistically significant decrease in firearm-related suicides in states with red flag laws? Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that. A reduction in suicide rates consistently shown up in the studies in those states.
So if we want to reduce suicides, then this is a step in the right direction. This is a guardrail or a tool in the toolbox to help reduce suicides. Is that not correct, Representative Bryant?
It would be if we could pass one, but we don't have one in Texas.
Are you also aware that red flag laws have been proven to help reduce the number of mass shootings?
Yes.
And so we know that just a few days ago, unfortunately, we had the anniversary of the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, correct?
Correct.
Wouldn't you think that we as a state, even if we didn't pass the law to raise the age to purchase assault rifles, which I think you and I would believe that we should raise the age to 21, at least we could do was implement red flag laws after that tragedy. Would you agree with that?
I would certainly think it's almost inconceivable that we have not already done that. That kind of a law could have prevented the shooting in Uvalde.
Are you also aware, Representative Bryant, that an overwhelming majority from research that I've seen that law enforcement supports red flag laws?
Yes.
Do you believe that red flag laws infringe upon anyone's constitutional Second Amendment right to bear arms?
They don't infringe upon that right any more than they infringe upon a person's rights when you have to have a domestic violence related protective order or a mental health related protective order. It's just part of life, part of society. There should be no special treatment for guns.
Are you also aware that polls, meaning that there have been numerous polls that suggest broad public support for red flag laws, even among Republican gun owners?
That's correct.
And basically, we've stated so many compelling reasons that don't limit people's constitutional right to bear arms, that help reduce suicides, that help reduce mass shootings, that help keep guns out of people that could pose a harm to themselves or others. So why do you think that we are even debating not having red flag laws?
I don't know, particularly when the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs indicates that 88% of Texans, including 81% of Republicans, support extreme risk protective orders. This bill, which I'm hoping that we don't pass, would, before we ever get extreme risk protective orders, make it a crime to enforce them if they're issued in other states.
Representative Bryant, do you believe that one of the reasons could be that there is an over-reliance upon scorecards from the National Rifle Association?
No question about it.
And do you believe that we should put the interests of public safety in Texans before the special interests of profits in selling more guns and ammunition?
I certainly do, and I believe that we ought to take a holistic look at our country and our state and what our people need and be reasonable about it. I'm a gun owner. When I finish hunting, I put my guns in the closet. I don't spend all day long thinking about them or laying awake at night daydreaming about being a hero using those guns. I put them away. They're there if I need them for protection of my household or if I want to go hunting. This unreasonable approach to guns is causing mass murders and causing suicides.
Well, Representative Bryant, are you also aware that because they couldn't get comprehensive federal gun reform legislation passed, former President Biden did take a step in the right direction and utilized an executive order for red flag laws? Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that.
And don't you believe that we as a state have a fiduciary responsibility to our constituents to do everything that we can to reduce the epidemic of gun violence in this state?
I do.
And red flag laws are certainly one of the tools in the toolbox that we could use, including raise the age, closing the gun show loophole. Are you aware of that?
I totally agree with that.
I think you have an excellent amendment. Thank you, Representative
Thank
Bryant.
you. This amendment would strike everything below the enacting clause and kill this bill. I urge you to vote for the amendment.